The 2025 Formula KFX season has finally come to an end, and I can't wait to show you all what happened. All the ups and downs, close fights, last lap passes, with it all accumulating in a three-way title battle at the final race. So let's go back to the start and see how this season's story unfolded. If you want a more in-depth review on this race, I have a full video already on my channel, so be sure to check that out. But coming into this race, I was super excited to experience a new league and see if it was something I wanted to commit to for the remainder of the season, as I already compete in K1 Speeds indoor leagues and K1 Circuits outdoor leagues, and I really wanted to give this a try. Now, I'm not gonna lie, it definitely started off rough. A few spin-outs, struggling to keep up to speed, lack of confidence, and much more kinda made the performance for myself feel lackluster, even if I did leave with the trophy. But this made me want to come back and show the potential I had. And now that I had the experience under my belt, I feel like I could come back swinging. I was determined to race hard, and I wouldn't be satisfied with myself unless I came home with that championship trophy at the end of the season. So then, my preparation for the first points-paying race began. Now, it may sound weird, but one of the most important things in racing is how you prepare before you even arrive at the track. It's crucial to do as much learning as possible before you sit in the kart. Since there's already so much happening, the last thing you want to think about is what direction the next turn goes. So I reviewed track footage I could find online and got a feel for the next layouts. But even better, I reviewed my old footage from the launch day to see where I was going wrong with my techniques and get a better understanding of how these particular karts handle and want to be driven. For me, I have a unique challenge of needing not only to adapt to the karts I'm given in a race day, but also to adapt to completely different machinery between leagues. Like I mentioned before, I race full-time in K1 Circuits Semi-Pro League along with K1 Speeds Challenge GP. And these three series have a fundamentally different way that these karts handle. K1 Speed is a heavy electric kart with slick tires on a slick track with a differential. K1 Circuit has a stiff axle with front brakes on asphalt with a much higher power electric motor. And KFX is a Rotax powertrain, rear-only brakes, and it's a ballasted series. So having to change between these formats every week provides a massive challenge. So reviewing all my data before the weekend helps me calibrate myself and my techniques for what the kart likes. Okay, so just to preface, I unfortunately don't have any video from this event, so I'll just be using filler from the launch day while I describe it. But this is a great time to explain to you all how the Formula KFX format works. Now, a race day consists of 3 competitive sessions: a 10-minute practice session that extends into a 5-minute qualifying, a pre-final, and then a final. So qualifying sets the starting order for the pre-final, and your pre-final finish is your starting position for the final race. Points are awarded for both the pre-final and the final, with a set amount always going to the winner and decreasing with each consecutive position. The season consists of a 4-race championship with 1 drop. This means that at the end of the season, your worst combined event total, meaning pre-final and final, are deleted from your season points total. Now for round 1, I was super excited coming into it. It's my first time racing in this series so far from home, and I'm determined to do well and bring home some hardware for my family. Now, qualifying would have a nice start, netting me a P2 start for the race, but the race would quickly flip my expectations. On lap 1 in the pre-final, I would get hit from behind and sent off track into the second corner. I'd return in last place and finish in a net 7th after some people ahead were given penalties. Now, it's pretty obvious that I was definitely not happy with this how this first round was turning out, but I needed to refocus, not dwell on what happened, as I really couldn't change it now. Can't control what other drivers do, but I can control how I regulate my mentality and how I go into the next round. So starting the final in 7th, I really had nothing to lose. I was set on pushing myself as hard as I can and to try and race my way to the front. Now, I would get a good start, gaining me a couple positions into turn 1, and a lap later, the leaders would scrap together and give myself an opening to slide into the lead. From there, it was all about staying cool, managing the pace, and I kept increasing the gap to the drivers behind, and I came across the line to win the opening race of the Formula KFX season. I was ecstatic. Starting the season off with a win meant so much, but like I mentioned before, the pre-final and the final are both points-paying races in the weekend. So with my P7 finish in the pre-final, it leaves me with a lot of work to do to catch up to the leaders. Even if it may seem like a small gap at the start, you'll see how these points are very hard to come by near the end of the season. Same track, different layout, but this time with the whole tic-tac-toe chicane. After some initial practice, I'd go into qualifying, but have some trouble getting a hold of my kart. It seemed to be lacking in a bit of straight line speed, so me and my friend Caden would work together bump drafting, and it paid off. Us starting P3 and P4 separated by only 1 millisecond. Now, the race would start off well, but one of the title contenders, Sham, would send a move up the inside of T2 and take second place. And from here, I would have some struggles. Trying to prioritize good exits and maximize my straight line speed became a priority. Those kind of like creepings of a little bit of lacking of speed in qualifying were starting to follow me into the race. I would also edit my racing lines and techniques a bit to gain some time and work with other drivers behind to try and catch up to the leader and close that gap. And after closing it, it became a three-way battle for the lead. I would eventually get a run only to leave the door open into T1 and lose the lead. But from here, it was all about the race management. Now that the people were in front and they were setting some good times, I needed to see how they were racing each other and wait for the right opportunity to show itself. Coming to the last 2 laps, I would slide back up into the second, and it was a last lap duel for the win. It was such a close finish with a mad dash to the line, and I was thrilled at having such a close battle, but Sham would take the win and increase his point lead coming into the final. For the final, it would start kind of slow. Sham created a good gap and I'd eventually lose second place. But once the leaders caught up to each other, their fight got intense. Sham got forced wide, leaving a gap for me to pass through and make an attempt at the lead. But after my attempt at the lead, the race would slow back down, while Sham would fall back to fourth by the end of the race. In the end, I took home another podium in the event, which was awesome, but the points gap to the leader would leave the same as we entered into the weekend, which was a little unfortunate. And with all that work I had to do this race, it was clear that making up even those 6 points was going to be a massive undertaking. The track layout would change once again, this time creating a super technical track with fast and tight corners. And this would be all about consistency and high commitment. With so many intense turns, it's easy to lose focus and make a mistake. Now, qualifying would be a bit of a struggle again. I tried to find a nice gap of fresh air and drop back, but I would catch up to drivers too quickly, leaving me with not much space to work. But even with that, I managed to qualify on pole position, which for this track is crucial to racing for a win, since overtaking was definitely going to be a challenge. In the pre-final, I'd make a strong start, holding onto the lead and making a small gap. But Caden and Sean behind, again, two very good drivers who were fighting me for the title at this point, would settle into a strong pace and make me work harder than ever to stay in the lead. They stayed attached to my bumper, trying to mount the pressure and force me into a mistake. But I continued to hold them off to the very end, taking the win in the pre-final and collecting enough points to just barely push me ahead in the championship lead, with Sean finishing a decent margin behind. The final would play out largely the same. I would get a good start, but with no drivers in front to learn from, my slower pace would let the drivers behind stay close. But even then, I had to stay cool, run consistent and manage my pace, and I didn't show any break in concentration. I'd come to the checkered flag in the lead and claim my second main event win for the season. Now, this win would massively help me in the points situation, boosting me into the lead. But after accounting for the drop race, the championship was still wide open. All it took was a win by Caden or Sham in the pre-final or final to turn up the heat. All I knew was that in this next race, it was going to be one of my hardest yet, and it wasn't going to be over until I crossed that finish line. The atmosphere coming into round 4 was completely different. With the point situation hanging over our heads, tension was in the air. But the event would start out nice. I got to run the pre-event testing and help coach another driver from the junior class, which was a lot of fun. But once qualifying started, it's like everything fell silent as we focused on the job ahead. All I had to do was focus for 5 minutes and get one good lap. I wanted to take it one session at a time, as it was super easy to overthink how the points would influence depending on finishing position, and that was just adding too much unnecessary stress. And at the end of the day, I just needed to win. That's all that was on my mind, and that was all that I was going to be happy with. And I'd finished qualifying with a 106.124, making me third, just behind Caden. Right at the start, this race was going to be an uphill battle. 4 of us were right on pace, and it was a dice roll on who would be ahead coming to the final lap. We continuously would cycle through positions, one person sending a move and sliding to the back of the pack, then another and another. By mid-race, the pressure was mounting, and you could tell. Everyone was pressing their limits farther and farther to try and find one small edge over the other drivers. And on lap 8, Caden would make a small mistake, blocking his brakes and sending him off the track. And just like that, I was right on the back of Sean for the lead. At this point, I couldn't help but do the math in my head. If he won, he'd bring the gap down to 5 points and give himself the best shot at winning the final. Any finish lower than second for me at this point would make my championship hopes disappear. I needed to go big for this pre-final. I would work with Calvin behind and slowly settle into a groove. Sean pulled away at first, but I was slowly reeling him in. I could feel that the end of the race was coming soon, and I looked back to see that Calvin had fallen back, and it was now all up to me for this win. I pushed the kart harder than ever, later and later on the brakes, harder into the corners, sooner on the gas, and then I just saw the white flag was out and we had one more lap left. I won by 0.060 seconds. That's all it took to change the championship outlook. Now, practically all I had to do was finish in the final, and it felt amazing. But there was still one more race left, and it wasn't over until it's over. The final was underway, and I would start off well, creating a nice gap, but the drivers behind started working together to close it quickly, forcing me to go on the defensive for the remainder of the race, and barely eke out a win just like in the pre-final. And with that, the season was finally over, and I achieved my goal of winning the championship and making my family proud. This win was much bigger than the rest. It guaranteed my participation in the 26th championship and the Rotax World Finals taking place in the UK later this year. I can't wait to go and take you all along for the ride. Now, before I end the video, I wanted to leave you all with my final thoughts. First, thank you guys for all watching and joining me on my racing journey. I know I talk about it all the time, and I always say this, but it means so much to hear from you guys and, think that these videos that I make are providing some value and a positive experience to people. But it's stories like this that I love to share with you guys and show what's possible in rental karting for your own journeys. I can't wait to take you guys on the ride to K1 Nationals again this year, hopefully taking it to Worlds as well. And with the Rotax World Finals later this year, it is going to be amazing. I cannot wait for what's going to unfold later this year. But if you guys liked what you saw, be sure to like, subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments below. I love talking to you all and sharing the passion for the sport. If you guys happen to see me at the track, come say hi. I love meeting you guys. But yeah, so I'll have new videos coming out soon. But until then, stay positive, and I'll see you all next time.